Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today, including Thomas Drance, standing by, sponsored by Bassan Motors. There are huge holiday savings at Bassan Motors. No GST, no gas, no payments. Check out the great offers at Bassan Motors, BASANT Motors.com. Before we get to Thomas Drance, last night after the Roberto Luongo ceremony, he tweeted something out. Rick, if you want to do the honors here as we show the tweet to our television viewers.
Roberto Luongo, as usual, was classy, engaging, and magnanimous, whatever that is, even in accepting a lesser honor, unfit for a player with his resume and impact. He uses these words no one else uses in the hockey tweets. Anyways, a Canucks legend of the highest order, no matter how the organizee sees it officially. Don't ask me to read his tweets again. He's always got stupid words in there that hockey people don't use.
Organization was kind of a gimme.
How the organization sees it officially. Anyways.
I can't talk. I've got one word that I stay away from, like the plague. Okay, we bring in Thomas Drance from The Athletic, as always, on a Friday. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. Got my thesaurus ready to go for complex words like organization.
Yeah.
Did you put two E's into the word organization, Rick?
Listen, I was trying to get through it as quick as possible, Thomas.
Yeah,
quick as possible.
Fast as lightning, like Darren Poopa.
Yeah.
Old Lightning goaltender Derek Poopa.
Yeah. His best days were his best days, though, Thomas, were in Buffalo.
Absolutely, but I couldn't make a Buffalo joke to make an allusion to being quick, Rick. Lightning. I needed fast as lightning,
Right.
Man, you're on the ball.
There you go. Okay.
I'm on the ball.
The floor is yours. Let's hear about the problems you had with last night's Roberto Luongo ceremony.
Well, no, I thought the ceremony was quite nice. Like I saw your tweet, Don, about how it was minimalist and nice. I just think it was a small ceremony fitting for a small honor. Which was too limited. Like the thing with Luongo is we know about the complexity of his time in Vancouver, and we can list all the reasons that people throw out for why his number shouldn't be retired. The McLean factor, the lack of cups, the trade request or how that played out, the cap recapture stuff. I mean, there's all this stuff, but like fundamentally it's all noise. Like I thought Luongo's commentary about rainbows and butterflies, it wasn't always rainbows and butterflies, but through my interactions with you, I became who I am. At the end of the day, Luongo, in terms of his stature, in terms of his resume, in terms of being the most consistent elite goaltender in the NHL for 8 years while he played in Vancouver, a Hall of Fame level player who spent his best seasons and played his most important games in this city, to put him in the Ring of Honor, to do a small ceremony, to do something a little more limited, for me, that honors or sort of like memorializes in the building all the petty stuff, all the reasons why he's not up there with everyone else, every other player of his stature, right? Which would be in particular the Sedins and Pavel Bure. You have to explain it. Why is he not there? And then you have to focus on these negatives. You have to focus on the stuff that's petty, that's small. And if you give him the full honor, if you give him the number one hanging on top of the rink, then you get to celebrate the greatness. You get to celebrate the legacy of one of the greatest to ever stop pucks in the NHL, who spent his best seasons in this city, connected with this city in a unique way, was the most discussed athlete in this city maybe ever. The only other guy who's even in the conversation is Pavel Bure. And I think you got to give it to Luongo simply because of social media, simply because of the environment in which Luongo played in. To me, that's just an error, and I felt like it hung over the proceedings. It effectively diminished, what I thought should have been a historic night for the club.
Thomas, 20 wins in 30 games. I think it's the quickest they've ever got to 20 wins ever in franchise history. Your thoughts on this start? I don't think anyone predicted it, but here we are. They're second in the NHL in the overall standings.
Yeah, I really liked this homestand, boys. Like, I really liked what we saw. How can you not? They won, what? Was it 4 or 5?
Yeah.
4 or 5?
Yeah. 4 or 5.
Allowed no goals after the New Jersey Devils sort of ventilated them. And that felt like one of those inflection point games, right? Like, oh no, are we going to see old habits creep into this team's game? And then 2 shutouts and, 2 low scoring, solid defensive performances. And here's what I really liked that's so different, in my opinion, from what we've seen in years past. And I thought was really emphasized last night. The Wild roll into town and that top line outshoots the Canucks at the top of the lineup, like controls play at the top of the lineup. But, when one of like 4 Minnesota Wild forwards weren't on the ice, they weren't dangerous. Same goes for Tampa Bay. Like when Point, Kucherov weren't on the ice, that team looked toothless. Carolina, kind of likewise, right? Aho looked dangerous on occasion. The Carolina Hurricanes took over small stretches of the game, but the Canucks looked like the deeper, more dangerous forward group. And then last night, you get Pius Suter back, and I hadn't really considered it until I watched that first period play out, boys. But, Pius Suter got hurt in Bluger's first game back, that game in Montreal. So, like, we haven't actually seen the Canucks play a stretch of games rolling Pettersson, Miller, Bluger, Suter down the middle of the lineup. But that's a wild level of center depth, right? I mean, those are really good players, 4 really good players. And we saw it last night, and, Canucks get 2 goals from their bottom 6, right? Kuzmenko capitalizes off some excellent forechecking work by Connor Garland. Dakota Joshua puts in his own rebound, and the Canucks were sort of, going at it thereafter. They get a 3rd goal from their bottom 6 on just an absolute sweet Henrik Sedin quality feed from Sergei Bobrovsky. So, you end up with this team that I think has an awful lot going for it. I think their team defense is real. I think their forward depth edge is real, and I think it plays against most teams. I don't think there's a lot of teams that have more like capable forwards up and down their lineup. I believe in this team's power play, and I believe in their goaltending, and like those are 4 pretty important strengths. I think those are real things. I'm still concerned about their offense, Rick. I don't think they're going to lead the NHL in goals after 82 games. I'm still a little bit concerned about their PK, even though it trended in a better direction. I still have some concerns about their puck moving from the back end. But, the fact is that this team has enough strengths, especially once you throw in like, superstar level players into the mix. Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson, these guys can win you a game any given night. I think this team's got enough that they'll have staying power as a really good team in this league throughout this season.
Okay, Thomas, the Jim Rutherford Media Tour, which also had a pit stop here at Donnie and Dolly. Did you take anything away from Jim and all his interviews this week?
Well, I did. I thought the commentary on the Canucks Central show on Sportsnet 650 about Elias Pettersson was fascinating. And there was a lot of commentary about Elias Pettersson, but, really the commentary that emphasized the extent to which it's in Pettersson's court, right? We'll do a deal of any term that he's comfortable with. That sort of line of thinking. Rutherford admitting that not having cost certainty with one of his best players is a holdup on some non-urgent matters for the team. I thought that was fascinating. We rarely hear an executive speak that frankly about those sorts of topics. I thought that was interesting commentary. And then I thought the conversation Jim had with you guys about Ethan Bear, right? That to me really pointed to what I expect to still be a desire to upgrade this defense core, right? So I took that out of his conversation with you gentlemen. But yeah, I mean, look, it was good to hear from Jim. We obviously didn't hear from Jim for a long period of time. I think the market was worse off for it. Jim's a compelling, thoughtful guy. I appreciated how, process-driven his answers were, right? Like given an opportunity to spike the football at multiple instances on multiple different outlets, shows, Jim's really focused on getting the job done. Like until that little X appears beside the Canucks name in the standings, you get the sense that no one internally is going to exhale. And I think that's a mature, respectful way to operate for the Canucks. Like I think that shows the sort of respect for the game that you'd expect from a long-tenured guy like Jim Rutherford. So it was good to hear from him. And I think that's more than anything my takeaway. This market, covering this team, following this team, I think it's better for the fans when Rutherford is engaged and talking to this marketplace.
Okay, I say this with total respect. I think you'll agree with me. You get criticized a lot for being negative. But one person, one player that you've been positive about for a long time, while other people have been, including Rick, while other people have been negative, is Connor Garland. Supposedly out of the organization not that long ago. What's he proving to people these days?
Well, Garland can drive play, man. Like, Garland can drive play. And, one thing I'd be really careful about if I, in assessing this team and talking about this team, and for Canucks management too, I think in moving forward in building this team, I think one thing we have to be really careful with is how opportunity impacts production. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So especially for wingers, like for me, I see Kuzmenko, Brock Besser, and Connor Garland as effectively like comparable pieces. They cost a comparable amount. I think they're all like pretty capable, top 6 caliber forwards in my mind. And I think the differences, the vacillation in scoring between them over the past few years is sometimes explainable by things that are out of their control. A spike in shooting percentage, which we saw with Kuzmenko last season and which we're seeing with Brock Besser this year as he converts on 25+% of his shots. Opportunity is a big one, right? Like, Garland doesn't play PP1. He plays with Luger and Dakota Joshua, whose career highs and points respectively are, I think, 23 and 29. Besser plays with JT Miller, a high-end playmaker. Kuzmenko played with Pettersson last year, a high-end playmaker. It looks a lot different when he's not playing with him. And now that he's playing with Pius Suter, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more offense from him, right? Like, I think Pius Suter is the sort of guy who can help boost Kuzmenko's offensive production, given his ability to make plays, at a middle 6 sort of level. So, more than anything, with what I'm seeing with Garland is I'm seeing a guy who I think is Vancouver's, honestly, I think he's their best play driver at 5-on-5. I mean, it's him or it's Pettersson. And I think he's one of the few players in this lineup outside of the top 2 centermen capable of being airdropped onto a line and really driving it. I know he hasn't found a ton of chemistry 5-on-5 with Pettersson or Miller, in part because he's a little puck dominant. His style's a little puck dominant, but man, you put him with 2 guys who don't carry the puck like him, who do the yeoman's work, and I think you're onto something. Like, I think he can be, sort of like a low-end version of what the Pittsburgh Penguins had, Rutherford's Pittsburgh Penguins had with Phil Kessel back in the day, where you have sort of a spark plug offensive creator on your third line. I think he could do more with more opportunity too. And I think we should be mindful of that. Like, the Canucks have these 3 guys. I think all of them are good. And I think you have to be careful about how you manage that in terms of who gets dealt, how you accumulate futures, but also who you commit money to going forward. Because, I think, again, all 3 of these guys are good players, and a lot of the sort of vacillation we've seen in the market, I think, is reacting more than anything to like bounces and opportunity, right? Things outside those players' control. It's partly why I'm not panicking despite how Kuzmenko's performed. And it's partly why my argument on Kuzmenko with you gentlemen last year was about dealing him, right? I thought you already had a lot of wingers who could do the job. I think Besser stepped up and shown that. Mm-hmm. And that's another guy who I've trended to be more positive on than many in the market over the last few years. So, wingers, it's a really tough game. If you're a like superstar level winger, like a Kucherov type, I think your production gets really tied up with opportunity, quality of your line mates, and then finishing luck. And it goes up and down. It's really hard to be a consistent scorer. And if you're a super consistent scorer in this league, like you're Ovechkin, they're unicorn type players. So I love to see Connor Garland getting his due. I thought he created multiple goals with the pressure he exerted on the Panthers last night. And I think that's been pretty consistent for him all year long. I just don't think that line's been getting the bounces and the production that necessarily reflect how good they've actually been in terms of driving a territorial edge.
Outstanding, Thomas. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, boys. Have a good weekend.
Thomas Drance.